Hello, everyone. Welcome to Unleashing Teams, our Microsoft Teams Part 4. I'm so excited for the call that we have today, and I'm going to do my best to host this, as usual, with the guns that we have joining us, who I'll introduce here in a moment. A couple things to call out. This will be recorded. We'll follow up via email with everyone within 24 hours of the call. And if you're interested to know how we're filming this today, we're using NDI, or Network Device Interface. If you click on the Q&A, there should be an announcement there where we've got a link that shows you how to do this in your organization. But it's an amazing experience, and we hope you enjoy. So if you haven't joined these calls before, I'm Jace Marino, and I lead Teams Platform for our customer success organization. I'm going to be your co-host and moderator today. Stefan, who's the amazing customer success manager, is behind the scenes working with some of our customer success managers from Microsoft, some of our best in the business, to make sure that we answer your questions. So do post your questions in the chat if you have them, and that team will do their best to get to all of them as soon as possible. And then Stu is the man behind the scenes who's producing this event with NDI. So really excited to have Stu here and show you this great experience. So with that time, I wanted to give you a quick background of what's going on. And we started these Unleashing Teams calls to show you how your peers around the globe are delivering true innovation and transformation in their organizations. And we're going to share those journeys like we will today, because we all know this doesn't happen overnight. And it's important to see where folks started, what the process looked like, the impact they've had, and what they're doing next. And every time we run one of these Unleashing Teams events, while Microsoft Teams will absolutely be the front and center of what we're talking about, this isn't just about Microsoft Teams either. This is about leveraging the investments you've already made as an organization, whether they were built by your organization, whether they were built by Microsoft, or whether they were built by someone else, and bringing them to life. And what's critical to effectively doing this is the approach. We're seeing culture and technology clash today like never before, especially with what's happened over the last 8 or 9 months. And so today's guests, who I'm about to introduce, fired me up because they have such an incredible approach to how they work together and the collaboration they have, and you'll see the benefits that they've reaped as a result. But they constantly think about adoption and change management, innovation, all under the foundation of the technology that they have at their fingertips. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dirk and Birgit, both from Henkel. So Dirk, head of collaboration for Henkel, and Birgit is the head of the SmartBot factory. Dirk and Birgit, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. It's such a pleasure to have you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Jace.
So I thought what we might do is start off is maybe giving us a little bit of background of each one of your organizations. And Dirk, if we could, maybe you could tell us about your digital collaboration team and what you do, if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure. My name is Dirk, as you mentioned, and I'm responsible for the global collaboration within Henkel. We are responsible for all the technologies, all the solutions that has somehow to do with collaboration, which is mainly based on the Microsoft stack. So we started some years ago with SharePoint, and in the meantime, maybe Teams and all the things that brings our people forward.
Awesome. And then, and Birgit, can you tell us a little bit about the SmartBot factory?
Yeah, hi, I'm Birgit. I'm leading the SmartBot factory team. So the SmartBot factory team is a kind of a center of excellence for chatbots. The SmartBot factory itself is a platform based on the Microsoft Bot framework, which enables us to deliver chatbots in a very fast and efficient way. We introduced the SmartBot factory 2 years ago. And we provide chatbots from the one hand for the internal usage as well as for consumers.
Oh, that's awesome. So we're gonna hear more details about both of your organizations as we go through the presentation today, including your operational model, some of the solutions you've delivered, and the impact. What we thought was really important, though, first is to give a little bit of background. And Dirk, I believe you're going to walk us through this. Was the organizational landscape and what your plans were pre-COVID that you guys were working on inside of Henkel?
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you who do not know Henkel, which I do not assume that there are really people who do not know Henkel, we are a global company with 52,000 employees around the globe. So people from more than 120 nations are working with us in, I don't know, more than 100 countries or whatever. So I think in each of your locations, there's also something from Henkel. Most known products are most probably those from Loctite, Persil, Far, and those kind of things, based on our 3 business units, which is adhesives, laundry and home care and beauty care, where we build or produce consumer products and innovative stuff. So before COVID, our plan was, after our journey to Office 365 in 2013, 2014, to smoothly do the migration to Microsoft Teams this year. We started in, I think, 2018, early 2018, to replace all our desktop phones by Skype IP telephony. We also started with Microsoft Teams for collaboration end of 2018 with some smaller teams and getting some hands-on, and planned the migration to Teams only during 2019. So when Microsoft has announced the end of 2020, and then, as Jace mentioned, then came Corona.
I was going to say, not to take away from your incredible success, but I think about the bottom there, and the plan was to have everybody migrated by the end of this year. So I'm guessing probably sometime around now. And then COVID happens. And so you had to pivot, like most organizations on this call. And so can you walk us through the new plan of attack here? Because I think that's really interesting, and it was really cool, some of the solutions that you delivered to accelerate this journey and get your folks on the teams.
For sure. So in the beginning, it was that, as mentioned, we had the plan that beginning of 2020. So before COVID, the plan was to bring people more and more to Teams, and do in parallel the further Skype telephony rollout. So this IP telephony rollout was planned to be ended, I think, in September this year originally. And besides that, we also planned to further roll out Microsoft Teams. And what happens then in beginning of this year, you all know this, the lockdown, which was for us the big advantage, that we could, let's say, enhance our plan and do things that we never thought that it could have happened before. So to migrate people to Teams much quicker than initially planned. So what we did was we deployed the client for Microsoft Teams to all our devices in February. We had a parallel approach with the corporate communications team to have a huge adoption campaign and change campaign to really bring people to Microsoft Teams. Luckily, we already had in the beginning of this year roughly 25,000 people who have already some kind of hands-on on Teams, which means they already used it for collaboration. So not for telephony, not for meetings, and not for chat, but all the things around SharePoint and conversations and channels. And then, as mentioned, we deployed the client, and the idea was to switch all the Skype meetings that are in the Outlook calendars of our users to Microsoft Teams. And there, luckily, we got together with the people from Microsoft a script, so a PowerShell script, which we could run and which automatically migrates all the calendar entries for our users to Teams meetings. And besides that, and that was then the story that comes a bit later, we thought about how do we bring the information to the end users? Now, also, how can we help? And where it was in the past that we sent out maybe emails or stuff like that. So besides the technology that we introduced, we luckily could now leverage a bot that helps us also to get people close to the technology, to chat technology within Teams, but also to be able here to provide these kind of new technologies to them. That was running.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry. No, go ahead, please.
So that was running quite successful, and also this migration of all the Teams meetings was also a success, so that we could, I think, in May 4th, we had all people globally in Microsoft Teams now, so including all the meetings and stuff like that. So we just remained the Skype telephony part, which was then later also much quicker than expected, migrated to Teams. So they are now already in Teams, so much earlier than expected.
That's actually what I was going to ask. Well, my first question, at least, was around the PowerShell script, and I was going to ask how it went and if it was successful. That we did that internally as we started moving folks at Microsoft too, and it was such a huge help on the transition, as small as that may sound, or maybe not to some folks, but not having to reset all of those meetings and bring those in was a huge help. And I think the disablement of the add-in was also huge because it kept people from going back to the way things were. But look, the reality, and I hope this isn't putting you on the spot at all here, Dirk, but since we started chatting about this story, a lot of locations around the globe, including, I'm not sure if it's all of Germany, but as you guys know, my sister lives in Kaiserslautern, and they've shut down and gone back into lockdown. And so ultimately, this foundation that you set up, I'm just curious now, as we're kind of in this in-between world right now, where we're forth on lockdown and opening things up, did this set a foundation that made it, I don't want to use the word easier, but honestly a little bit easier for this transition now as you're going back into lockdown? Does that make sense?
I think yes. So absolutely. So it was vice versa. So first of all, so the technology itself and how we could do it was really improving our capabilities to do mobile working. Yes? And also how we did it was also based on this migration, for example, or based on the bots that we use. It was also really smooth. Yes? So we really had not that much complaints. We have not that much issues also when it comes to networking or whatever. So that was really, really a cool journey. And the fact that we had to do it due to this lockdown things and to improve it, that also enables us, as mentioned already, to act much quicker than before.
For sure. And that's a really good transition, because what I've been so excited talking to you guys about and your journey is how you accelerated it and how you didn't take the approach that honestly we hear some organizations take, where it's we want to get everybody to just use the basics in Microsoft Teams first. And don't get me wrong, I understand that, and I think that's incredibly important today more than ever, because we need business continuity. Because if we do go into lockdown, we want to make sure that our people can use technology to work wherever it is they are. And I think it's a gray area on what the future is going to look like. But the reality is you didn't wait for everybody to get on board. In fact, you said, how do we take some of these investments we have and use it to accelerate our transformational journey and our adoption of Teams? And the way that I put this together that we're going to discuss here, and you've referenced it a couple of times, but first is you thought about how do we get started with Teams? How do we make it easier for users to get answers to common questions and self-serve a little bit? So Dirk, your team, I would assume, isn't overloaded with the amount of questions that you get over and over. And we'll touch on Jack a little bit, which is the chatbot you had here on the next slide, if that works. And then from there, you said, we also want to modernize. Can we rethink how we communicate with our people? Because the reality is, for most organizations around the planet, those broad emails that go out to the whole company have a low hit rate and a low click rate in terms of the impact that they have and how many people read them and click on them. And so you're going to talk to us as well about who you call Captain Collaboration, which I love, but one of our other Teams app templates. And to clarify, we're going to share this with the audience. These are pre-built Teams app templates that you can leverage within your organizations that are customizable. So they're ready to deploy today, but you can personalize them just like Henkel did. And then we're going to go over to Bridget and talk about the SmartBot factory and how you transform with some of these team solutions and what they're doing with our Microsoft Bot framework, where they're going to share a couple of these. So with that, maybe we can kick over, Dirk, and talk about Captain Collaboration first, which was Company Communicator. And I love your strategy here, because again, it was rethinking the way that you communicate with your employees and not just giving them the technology, but the whole story that goes around that adoption program. So can you tell us a little bit about what you did with Captain Collaboration?
Yeah, for sure. So for those of you who do not know this communicator bot, so it's a bot that is part of Microsoft Teams, and we use it to reach out to all our Teams users. So it's something where we can push informations to our end users, where we ensure that this information is also reached out to those users. And since these are short messages that we send out, We have also sometimes built in links that lead to a SharePoint site or to our news hub to provide more information. And what we did here is we first of all have some kind of authoring concept, which means that we have a plan that we on regular basis really push information. It was in the beginning when we transferred to Teams in May. It was mainly about how meetings are working in Teams. So since people were coming from the Skype meetings part, we also provide information or quick information, how to, for example, connect the headset and these kind of things. So all these small informations. And together with this authoring plan, we have in the background a change management team. So people who are really aware of how we should communicate to end users and how to reach out to those users. And this is the clear is that people do not need to leave the technology where they have an information need. So in the past, it was, as mentioned, that we send out emails or that we provide various SharePoint news sites where people can use and search for information. Here we really push out using the communicator and also get some kind of interactive way with the users. Okay.
Hey, Jörg, if I might ask you, and forgive me, this is a little bit of a leading question, but there was a great question in the meeting event. Why work with a change management team as you roll out this technology and as you're putting together this plan? What's the benefit for your organization as the collaboration team?
Because we want to ensure that the message is, let's say, formulated in a way that the user can understand it. So if you guys or if guys from IT are there, you may know that it's sometimes hard to speak in a language that the user understands. And here we have people who really make the message easy, who make the message understandable for the end users, where a technical guy always struggles with. So that is the also when it comes to user journeys. So it's also sometimes that the messages that we push out to the end users are also somehow based on each other, so that we really keep the interest of the users in the messages of the communicator.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And out of curiosity, did you experience much resistance from users? Because there's some questions on the chat too. There's a lot of change happening right now. If we step back for 1 second, is first of all, in the global economy and environments, you've got COVID, of course. You've got a move from Skype to Teams, which I think most people realize when they start using it, that frankly, it's got all of the capabilities and more. But ultimately, you're also giving them company communicator. We'll also talk about Jackbot here in a second. But I guess ultimately, and sorry, long-winded question, but was there a resistance from some of your workforce to this change, and how did you handle that?
Not that I know, to be honest. So the one of the big advantages of the communicator or the bots itself within Microsoft Teams is that the user is fully free to hide these, and also if the communicator pushes too much messages or whatever, it is very easy not to ignore, but to keep it, let's say, offline and keep it hidden in the background. And as soon as you are interested, you get back to the bot. So it's completely different or different situation to emails. So where always the inbox is pushed and where we force users to read the inbox. There it's much more easier to handle. For sure, in the beginning, when we had some tests or whatever, there we had some, I would not say complaints, but people who said, no, I do not want to have this kind of message. But as soon as we also explained how they can work with the communicator, that we also, by the way, did with the communicator itself, people get an understanding and in the meantime really appreciate the technology. So we have for each message that we send out more than 30,000 reads. So that is something that we could not reach with email, for example.
It's a great answer. Do you mind if I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I think it also comes back to your approach, right? Yes, this happened fast, but don't get me wrong. Humans are resistant to change for the most part, right? Not all humans, I'm generalizing, but for the most part, humans are resistant to change. So I think we'll always experience it to some degree when we're making large changes. But the reality is you all did this so well and had less resistance, I would imagine, than normal, because this was a thoughtful approach. You had the adoption and change management team. You thought about the communication. You thought about how do we make it, we'll talk about Jack in a second, but how do we make it easy for users to not only learn how to use the technology, to understand why they have the technology, and then to get answers to questions that they might have in a safe space. And that alleviates a lot of the resistance. And I'm hoping everybody understands that on the chat. It's such an important point and why we've all loved working with you. And I want to also give a shout out selfishly, and this is not to plug Microsoft, but this is why we invested in the largest customer success organization on the planet. Because you can't just give teams to your company and expect things to change overnight, right? It's got to be thoughtful. This is a different way of working. And so we know that we need adoption and change management specialists to help our customers. So Stefan and team who helped, I just want to give them a shout because I'm hoping that was a great collaboration effort that you had there that led to some of the success. Correct me if I'm wrong. We can throw Stefan under the bus if we need to. Cool. So Dirk, can you give us a little bit of information on Jack, so this Q&A bot that you put together? I'm really excited about this one, and I know you work closely with Bridget and team to make this one happen.
For sure. So what is this Jackbot about? So it's so Birgit, interrupt and correct me if I'm wrong. So it's a chatbot that we use for making people or bringing information also to our end users and making or giving quicker answers, let's say it that way. So we had in the beginning, when we did this transition from Skype to Teams, we had a lot of knowledge documents based on our SharePoint site. So we have a so-called Smart Hub where we put all the information and news that we think are relevant for the end users into that. So how to work with Skype, how to work with Teams, how to do a call, and these kind of things. So a training portal. The challenge was there that you always have to search for information. It was always hard to find that information and all these kind of things. And then we started to think about what about building a bot? So a bot that is able to crawl these sites and to put Q&As together based on this Q&A maker and technology, and use this bot already in Skype, which was our former chat standard, so that people can already get familiar with Jack and also know what kind of questions they can ask, and then get used to Jack and also use then Jack later when we have or after the migrations to Teams. So people already know that they can approach Jack if they have questions to Teams, as they did it before within Skype. And that was really, really a big step. So people do not need to go to a site and search for something or call someone or whatever, but use this great, simple technology.
And no, it's a great summary there. And Dirk, one thing that I'd love to ask you, because we get this question from a lot of organizations around the planet. Sorry, I say one thing. I've asked you like 5 questions. But with Company Communicator and the Q&A bot, was it difficult to implement these in your organization, whether it was security and compliance, whether it was standards within your IT department? Did you have any challenges getting these implemented in the first place?
For the communicator, not, since it is more or less it's a standard technology where we had for sure some kind of compliance check and these kind of things. So that was not that huge effort. For the bot itself, that is something that maybe Birgit can better answer than me, because there is a whole framework behind.
Yes, for sure. So for us, it was easy way to develop that, because we developed already chatbots upfront before we implemented Jack. So that was not a big deal for us. But what I would like to emphasize is that we built a special service for Dirk's team. So the first time we met regarding this project, he was wondering about the effort he has to put on in the knowledge base. And then we thought, why do not invent a so-called crawler service? And we developed that on our own, this crawler crawler service. And what does this crawler service do? This crawler service goes over existing SharePoint sites. So we have SharePoint sites regarding Office 365, regarding digital workplace, and retrieve the information out of these existing SharePoint sites and feed the bot with this information. And this crawler service can also recognize automatically what is a question, what is an answer. That is the first big advantage. So the requester or a Dirk do not have to care about the knowledge base. So there was no effort to set up the knowledge base at all. And the other advantage is when there is an update on the existing SharePoint sites, the crawler recognizes that as well. So we have a job running every day, and this crawler service detect what is new and feed that update also to the knowledge base and keep that knowledge base also up to date. So also there, no effort needed. And you have a chatbot without dealing with a knowledge base.
That's so cool. I can't wait to geek out on some of these bots with you. I will say this: if bots are new to folks on the call, and it's a great answer, Bridget. Thank you so much. If bots are new to you on the call, when we talk about knowledge base, that is the repository of questions and answers that the bot is using to respond to the user, right? Just the simplest way that we can describe it. And so that can be something as simple as a Word document or an Excel file, or something as intricate as a static web page, and everything in between. And it's really cool seeing what you all have done here, and again, the impact that this has had. What I might say is Dirk, if we may just close out on this as we move on to the next phase of your journey, why take this approach? If you could walk us through that, because there's clearly, if I'm being really honest on some of the Q&A, I can some folks who think they're going to have resistance in their organization to take an approach like this, and we'd love to hear, and we're going to touch on impact as we go through, but why you decided as a team, as a small team, if I understand correctly, to take this approach.
Yeah. I think the main reason was that we wanted to keep the users in the technology itself. No? So we wanted to keep them in Teams and give the information in Teams, and also give them the possibility to use Teams itself to get the knowledge that they need. No? So that was the reason why we thought about bots. And also the reason was that we can use also the bot outside Teams in our former Skype technology. No? So that means, as I already mentioned, Jack was also available before. So that they do not need to learn something more. And what we also wanted to do, we did not want to reach out to the end users and overwhelm them with bunches of information and documents and training material and whatever, but give them small pieces which are relevant in the certain time, let's say it that way, which was in the beginning most of meetings. We will use the collaboration within the coming months to provide information about new features, like, I don't know, private channels when we will introduce them at Henkel, or breakout rooms, or all these kind of things. So we have learned in the past that it was challenging to reach out to users with, I don't know, emails or SharePoint knowledge pages, but it is much better to give them this, let's say, interactive feeling here, that they also can reach out to Jack, for example, with their own questions.
So if I may, Dirk, real quick, and correct me if you feel differently on what I'm about to say. But I think the difference here, because a lot of organizations want to know, if they use something like Company Communicator, how do you balance the communication so it doesn't become another email, right? And another thing that users ignore. And so I think you can actually alleviate that if the content is good. But there's also a difference between Company Communicator and email that's really important, and it may be easily missed, is that you're reaching users in the tool. You're reaching them in Teams, and you're using that tool to reach them. Versus the challenge is, if you were teaching people how to use Teams and sending emails, there's a disconnect between the two technologies right there. And small thing to discuss, but I think it's really important. But I mean, so my question, one last one for you, if you'll indulge me, is, do you have a communication strategy with the change management team, and how often you send communications with Captain Collaboration?
Yeah. Currently, it is once a week. That we once or twice, once a week or every 2 weeks. It depends. But you are completely right. So we have to take care that we do not push too much and not too less. So people should know that they get valuable information within the communicator chat. And what we also do is, and that is also different to email communication, is we keep it short. And if we catch the interest of the people, then there is a link within the chat to further information. That for me, it is a big difference to email, where most of the people put everything in and people do not really read it then. And here we have, let's say small pieces of information. But you are completely right. It will be also challenging in the future as there are more and more features coming. We will, or we plan later a bit more new applications that we want to build into Teams, new bots and these kind of things. And then we have to find a good balance of information that we send out with the communicator.
And you learn as you go, right? I mean, I have this struggle. We have a 2,500 person customer success organization, and I look after team platform. And so we do the same thing, right? It's really important. I think you hit it on the nose. Something that I didn't say is to be concise and focus on the absolute most important things. And then to your point, if people want to explore more, send them the information for more, rather than do what I think a lot of organizations do, Microsoft included and myself before, is you try to send everything in one message. And that's when no one reads it. So it's a great insight. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, such a great phase to the journey. And so what we're going to do is we'll come back now to the transformation journey. So we just covered sort of get started, how to modernize, and then we're going to move over to the SmartBot factory and talk about how you transform how your organization operates. And so, Birgit, really excited to hear from you as well here on, maybe you can give us some background first on your SmartBot factory and when you started, the members and your size, why you do and what you do.
Yeah, sure. The SmartBot factory, as I mentioned, we implemented 2 years ago, but we started a little bit earlier. So 4 years ago, we started an evaluation phase. It was around about 4 years ago as I saw the first time the bot framework as well as the Q&A maker. And I was really impressed about the Q&A maker, what is possible, how easy it is to build up a chatbot in a short time. And therefore, we start evaluating this solution. We evaluate also other solutions, but we came to the conclusion it makes totally sense that we go with the bot framework and the Q&A maker. Why? Because it fits best in our current system landscape. We have Office 365 already in place. Then we do not have to deal with the authentication and so on. And with that, during the evaluation phase, we saw that there are a lot of demands going on within Henkel and a lot of initiatives going on. Some departments also started to develop chatbots, and there thought it makes sense to have a kind of a center of excellence, and therefore we started to build up kind of a factory. So therefore, with the factory, the advantage we have is to standardize processes, to standardize technologies, because with the other departments, they started with different solutions, different processes. And on the other hand, we can also bundle expertise with our SmartBot factory. And with that, we started also our first chatbot, which was a finance chatbot called Eno. It's also important to give a chatbot a name, to give the chatbots a personality. We created also a logo, that what we always do with our chatbots, giving the chatbot a name, giving them a logo. Because people like that, then you have a higher user adoption with that as well.
I mean, it's a little psychology there, right? I mean, it makes the bot more personal and less of a bot at that point, right?
Yeah, that's totally right. And what we also do is we implemented a chit chat functionality. That means there's not not just topics regarding to the chatbot. So, for instance, this chatbot regarding to finance questions, you can also ask them for the weather or for jokes, and people love that. And that's how we also increase the user adoption with our chatbots. Eno was a use case. So, for instance, in the finance department, they had, before we introduced Eno, a huge PDF file where they, within the PDF file, there was the explanation how to post specific costs. And when the finance people would like to post a cost, always they have to look through these bunch of pages in that PDF file. And with a chatbot, they just can ask Eno and will receive an answer right away. And that is a big advantage. So a lot of time saving, and at the end, for sure, cost savings in the finance department. Our team, we have 3 developers and 2 project managers. This is a small team, but with that, we already developed a lot of chatbots, not just Eno, that was just the beginning. And we with the SmartBot factory is also the big advantage that we just have to develop the chatbot once and then can spread it out into different channels. So one channel, for instance, is Teams, but there are also other channels like SharePoint and websites. We have specific portals. And that is the advantage, that you have to develop the chatbot really once and not for every channel.
It's really great. And what we were hoping you could cover is maybe your operational process, because there's already some questions coming in on this, which is awesome. And there's a ton of interest, but where your engagement starts, how the process works, so how you're working with these different departments and how you decide if you're even going to build a bot or a solution. And then how you measure success and address support. I think those are really the keys to some of your success. Correct me if you feel differently.
Yeah, so as I said, we have a huge demand when it comes to chatbots. So I think we have 1 or 2 calls per week, and they request a chatbot. And we're starting first with an introduction of the SmartBot factory, explain the requester what is possible and also what is not possible, because not everything is possible with a chatbot. People always believe, okay, this is the one and only oversized, all knowing chatbot, but that is not. So currently the technology is not that far that we can provide a chatbot has all knowledge inside. And on the other hand, sometimes there are requests for let's say, minor things. So when you have an FAQ list with just 10 or 20 Q&A pairs, then it doesn't really make sense to transform that in a chatbot. But in most cases, it does make sense, because they come with a huge knowledge. So they have a huge FAQ list, for instance.
Can I ask you a quick question on that, Bridget?
Yeah.
So these departments, when they reach out to you in your initial engagement, they've often already built the knowledge base or the sets of Q&A pairs?
Both. So sometimes they do not actually have a knowledge base. Sometimes they have already a kind of an FAQ list. But if they do not have an FAQ list, they have to build that on their own, or they use the crawler service, as we did it with the Jack chatbot.
And the crawler service helps you just, and this is a leading question, but just for folks watching who might not be as familiar with bots, the crawler helps you increase the quality of the Q&A, correct me if I'm wrong, and help build that knowledge base as you go, which would allow you to answer questions more effectively. Because it'd be awesome to hear some of your insight on how you think about these knowledge bases, because I'm sure you're well aware of this more than I am, that users will ask the same question in a variety of different ways. And so how do you make sure the bot can respond and understand those questions and get folks the answers they need?
The accuracy of the chatbot does not depend on the crawler service or the manual work. So it has always be in a correct way. So that means when the crawler service finds enough information in the existing SharePoint sites, then you can get sure that the chatbot can answer your questions accurately. So that means when you do not use the crawler service, then you have to set up it manually, and then you have to keep an eye on that you have a lot of Q&A pairs inside the knowledge base, that you have a lot of alternative questions in your knowledge base. So to get sure that the chatbot has the right answer.
And the crawler service is part of the Microsoft Bot framework, right?
Yeah. No, not from the Microsoft Bot framework, from the SmartBot factory. So the crawler service, we developed that on our own. That is a feature from the SmartBot factory.
Very cool. So essentially what you're doing is if the answer doesn't exist in the Q&A pairs or the knowledge base, your crawler is actually going out and searching your intranet for the answer. Is that right?
No, we separate that. So based on the requests. So if you have SharePoint sites, then you can use the crawler service. If not, then you have to build up the knowledge base on your own. That means you cannot have both.
Cool. Awesome. Sorry, I get this is really interesting hearing this. Hopefully it's helping some folks out there. So you had a business unit at this point reach out to you. You have the initial call with them. Can you walk us through then that process? When you kick off the design process and how this all runs together?
Yeah, once we found out, okay, it makes sense to develop a chatbot for that specific use case, then we start requirement analysis phase, making a brainstorming session, creating mock-ups, and once we aligned with the requester, we start the development phase. That means we develop our projects based on a Scrum method. We have sprint meetings every week, and with that we are very fast. Based on the bot framework and also based on our processes, we can develop chatbots within weeks. That means couple weeks we have a chatbot up and running, and after that we have some test cycles, and then we are good to go and can deploy our chatbot. And we can deploy our chatbot then in different channels. So we deploy that into the channels which was requested. And after that, or beside the whole development of the chatbot, we do also develop or creating a report for the request or for the chatbot. That is also very important, just to know how the adoption rate is, how the usage is of the chatbot. So for the whole process after the go live, you need that reporting tool. And we create that report on Power BI. And also there, the requester can decide which KPIs should be on the report. So for instance, how many users did use the chatbot, which Q&A pairs or which question were raised, which channel were used, and with that you can adjust your knowledge base. So that is very important when it comes to the time after the rollout. You can leverage the report to adjust, retrain your knowledge base.
So that is such an important point that's come up in the questions already. So you're giving these organizations you're working with or the groups guidance. They're helping build the knowledge base if it doesn't exist, and then you use the Power BI reports and the dashboard that's telling you the common questions you're getting and some of the other information to adjust the knowledge base as you go. Did I explain that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. As I said, with reporting, you have a good overview about the things going on with this chatbot. So for instance, there is a question and you see the chatbot has an answer for that, then you can maintain your knowledge base based on that, or you see, okay, there are coming questions where we haven't yet an answer for that, or we didn't consider that, then you can also maintain your knowledge base based on that. So that is a good base to have a feeling about what's going on with your chatbot.
That's awesome. And then one last question for you on this, Bridget, is support or post deployment of the bot service. When you're working with these operational groups, how do you address support, troubleshooting? Let's say they want to request updates to the bot, et cetera. Is that something that you deliver as the SmartBot factory, or do you hand these off to the organizational groups and they're responsible for it after deployment?
No, that is also part of our full life cycle management. So we do not deliver a fire and forget solution. So we support also the requester after the go live. That means we have regular meetings with them. We have a governance model behind that. We monitor the reports, do troubleshooting, bug fixing, and also help to retrain the chatbot after go live.
Awesome. So exciting seeing all this, and there's some great questions. Sorry, if I may, one last one away. Why choose Microsoft Q&A Maker versus an alternative service? Was there a lot of discussion around that in the first place?
Yeah, as I said, it is very, very easy to use the Q&A Maker, because you have, on the one hand, maybe someone of you saw that already on the internet page. You can feed the knowledge base just with an URL, and the Q&A Maker can recognize what is a question, what is an answer. And also with the Q&A Maker, it's easy to feed the knowledge bases in combination with the bot framework. So therefore, we decided to go with the Q&A Maker.
Very cool, thank you. And one last thing I'll say on this before we move on is, and just a statement, but what I find really interesting that a lot of organizations are doing, and Dirk, I'm sure you guys are already all over this, is a lot of times you'll take to the point earlier, is you'll take the reporting, or you'll take the questions and answers that you're getting in the Q&A bot. So I just circled Jack right there, which, if anybody remembers, that's the Q&A bot you use for adoption. And you can leverage some of those common questions you're getting to communicate to your users. So if you think about the communication strategy, is you can use the chatbot service to determine your communication strategy to address the common questions that are coming up across your organization. I find that to be a really powerful tool that we're seeing a lot of organizations leverage as we move forward. So Bridget, if we could, maybe in a couple of minutes, we were hoping to walk through, as a last part here, some of your favorite bots that you've delivered. And we've already talked about Jack, so maybe we could talk through the HR help desk bot and the source to pay chat bot. I think these are so cool.
Yeah, sure. So one of my favorite is the HR help desk chatbot. That was the latest chatbot we rolled out last week. The use case here is that this chatbot should answer questions related to HR. Here, the big highlight is that we implemented a live agent handoff feature. Also, that feature we developed on our own. There is an out-of-the-box feature as well from Microsoft, but in this case, we developed that on our own because there was a lot of adjustments we have to do, and therefore we decided to develop that on our own, but with the help of the bot framework and Teams. What does the live agent handoff do? When you ask a question in Teams, so you open Teams, open the Ask HR chatbot, that is the name of the chatbot, and type in your question, then you can click on Ask an Agent. You can type in your question, click on Ask an Agent, and then this question will route it to your specific agent. So you have to know that Henkel has different agent services. We have 4 locations where our agent services are located. And when I raise a question, so for instance, I'm from Germany and I have a question regarding my holidays, then this question has to be routed to my agent service, so to that specific location. Once the agent receives my question, they also see that in Teams. So they have a Teams dashboard, see all the questions coming in. So it's a kind of a ticketing system. And there are a lot of agents in that service. And they can decide if they would like to pick up my question. And once they have done that, they can see the whole conversation and can answer my question right away in Teams. And I can see that in my Teams chat.
Oh, this is awesome.
The other chatbot is source-to-pay chatbot. This chatbot should answer questions related to ordering and invoicing processes. And here also one technical highlight I would like to emphasize is the SAP integration. With that chatbot, we connected the source-to-pay chatbot to SAP. And when it comes to an invoice question, so for instance, you would like to know the status of a specific invoice, you can type that into the chatbot window. Before we had the chatbot, people had to log into SAP, and after 10, 20 or 30 clicks, they get then the answer for the invoice. And with the chatbot now, they just have to type in their question, the invoice number, and they directly get the status of the invoice. And that is also a really, really cool feature, which saves us a lot of time.
I was going to say that's actually your last question is a perfect transition, is measuring the impact of your success. There's already some questions on that, but it would be awesome to hear, because we know you both have been incredibly successful and had a major impact on your organization. But what does that look like for both of your teams? And if we might, and Birgit, thank you so much for first of all sharing all that information with us. Dirk, could we maybe start with you on some of the digital collaboration team and the stats that you've all delivered? Because it's staggering what you've done as an organization.
Yeah, for sure. So we put together some KPIs or statistics from last month and over the past. Is that currently nearly 90% or more than 90% of our users are using Teams. Now, for sure, those who need to do phone calls, they have to use it because we do not have any desk phones any longer. We just do this IP telephony stuff within Teams. But also for collaboration, we have in the meantime, I don't know, more than 6,000 or 7,000 teams where people are collaborating on the different areas. We have all these bots that also Birgit introduced are also being used by more than 80% of our users. So be it the Jackbot, be it the HR bot or whatever, they are in use. And what was really incredible, and that was nice to see and or very satisfying to see over the past months, how the adoption in Teams increased. For sure, that was mainly also due to this Corona crisis that we have to stay at home, but we have at least last month, so just in a month, more than 20 million total chat messages where people chat with each other. We had more than 300,000 Teams meetings, one-on-one calls reached more than 1 million in the meantime. So the adoption is really great in the moment, and we also try to keep for the coming months.
This is such a staggering stat right here. 80% of your users leveraging bots and services in Teams. But I think this goes to show your success here. You have 90% of Henkel employees leveraging Teams because they recognize it's more than just a chat service. It's more than just a collaboration service. You've got an incredible amount of meetings on there, but they're seeing this potential. And I encourage organizations out there to think about this like you have, which it's not just a replacement for Skype for Business. It is a different and new way of getting work done better and leveraging, and that's from both ends, right? To make your life easier, but to also make the user's life easier and adjust to this world that we're living in today. So just incredible stats there. Birgit, can you give us a few of your KPIs that you've been working on, also equally as incredible with the SmartBot Factory?
Yeah. Today we have over 50,000 questions were raised in our chatbots, which is a huge number. Over 20,000 Q&A pairs we've already stored in our different knowledge bases. Because we have already 15 chatbots rolled out within Henkel. And we have over 10 channels integrated. So starting with Teams, SharePoint, intranet, and different portals, websites, and so on.
So quick question for you on this one, Birgit, because I'm not sure we'll actually get to the what's next section based on time. But we have organizations sometimes that get a little nervous when they see we've got a bunch of different apps or bots for different use cases. And we kind of touched on this earlier. Is there a strategy or vision for the future on where you start to maybe bring some of these solutions together?
Yes, so we see also this trend. As we now have 15 chatbots already, and they're coming more and more, especially next year. So yeah, I have a vision that that every Henkel employee should have his own digital personal assistant. That means they have a single point of contact, his digital assistant or her digital assistant, and can put then his or her digital assistant together with different skills. So we will transform our existing chatbots into skills, and then the employee can decide if he would like to put a specific skill to his digital chatbot. You can imagine that like when you have Alexa at home and you put skills on that. For instance, you would like to know the latest soccer results, then you put the skill soccer into your Alexa device. And that is the same here. When you are a finance employee and you would know more about finance, then you can put the finance skill into your digital assistant.
That's awesome. So you can create essentially your own personal assistant, one bot that rules them all at some point.
Yeah.
I love it. So looking back, we thought, well, what I asked the two of you when we put together this slide is what advice and insight would you give your peers if they were starting this journey themselves? And so, Dirk, maybe we can start with you again here, if we can cover this and some of the things you shared with me.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that just came into my mind and which helped us a lot and which is not listed here on the slide is to try to go really step by step for the users. So not, especially Teams is a good example, to not provide the whole bunch of functionalities just at once, but introduce it step by step, and then use that what is mentioned here, use the integrated service. So accelerate the adoption by using the technology itself. So like the communicator, like our Jackbot, like those, so that they do not need to leave the technology itself, and partner with other departments, other let's say stakeholders within your organization who have maybe a bit better skills than you. For in our example, it's a SmartBot factory for the bot development. It's corporate communications for how we communicate, how we get the knowledge to the end users. So these are the main three pillars.
Beautiful message, right? I think a lot of organizations, and I think we've done this before too, where you try to own the adoption of technology from one small department. You'd be so much more successful if you're partnering with other organizations. So great insights. Thank you, Dirk. Birgit, could we maybe leave with a final few thoughts from you here on your insights and advice looking at the SmartBot factory?
Yeah, my advice is when you plan to have chatbots in your company, then think about an operational model and about processes. Makes totally sense when you have a lot of chatbots, not when you have one or two. Then I think a factory approach is oversized. But when you would like to have more and more chatbots, then you should think about first about process and operational model. Also, an advice is leverage existing tools like the bot framework. So for us, it was very, very easy then to develop chatbots very fast because we used the bot framework. And with the processes we had already, that was easy then for us. And now the latest tool from Microsoft is the Power Virtual Agent, which is also very promising because that allows citizen developers, so non-coder, to create their own chatbot. So there is a dashboard. You can create your chatbot via drag and drop, very, very easy. And also there a lot of potential with that new technology. In terms of adoption, we learned that Microsoft Teams is the best platform to raise awareness. So if you have chatbots, use the Teams channels. Why? Because people mostly work with Teams. They have Teams already open. They do not have to switch between applications. They can mark their favorite chatbots as a favorite and can stick them onto the sidebar. So also here, use Teams to create awareness. So the last thing with the bot framework, there comes a lot of new features with it, like cognitive services, the language understanding, skills are available out of the box. Also here to accelerate the development of chatbots, that makes this features very useful.
I love it. Both great insights and advice. I'm going to share the what's next slide just because I want to be respectful of folks' times, and we're about at the hour here. So you both did share what you're doing next, and so we'll share that with folks after the call with the email. I wanted to just close out real quick that if you were interested today in some of the things you saw, again, we'll share these links and slides out with you. But by each one of these solutions that you saw, so the FAQ bots, Captain Collaboration, the company communicator, and the bot framework and Power Virtual Agent that we just discussed, those are the direct links you have down at the bottom of the slide if you want to get started in your organization. Hopefully this has inspired a lot of you to see what is possible and the impact that it's had. And if you want to keep this conversation going, shoot me an email. We actually have a Teams team where we keep discussions like this going. We're sharing more best practices like this around the globe. And honestly, what your peers like Dirk and Birgit are actually doing. But to both of you and to Stefan and everybody who's helping behind the scenes, just want to say a huge thank you. Your story is incredible. It's so inspiring. And it's such an honor to have you on our Unleashing Teams call today. So thank you again for spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Pleasure.
Such a pleasure. Well, I'll chat to you soon. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll keep you posted on the next one.